Hey everyone, and thanks for tuning into the next episode of the Sweaty Palms podcast. I'm your host, Zoe Dillon, and today's guest is Drew Beskin. You could describe Drew as a jack of all trades. He's played in many bands, to name a few, the District Attorneys, Party Dolls, and Purses, as well as started his own solo projects. On top of his playing, he manages local acts here in Athens, Georgia, through his production company called Supercanoe. We talk about how he got into the music scene here, cool projects he's working on now, and so much more. So let's get into the episode.
My name is Drew Beskin. I've been in Athens for, I guess, close to 10 years, or maybe just under. I moved here for the second time to run the Georgia Theater. I was the GM there. And prior to that, I was in Atlanta, and I played in bands that I fronted. I also managed a few artists. Manage might be a loose term. And then, play some shows, would put together some events, would help raising like sponsorships for events like at South by Southwest for the bands that I was in, as well as some other acts. And then I moved up to Athens, did the Georgia Theater thing, and while I was there, started releasing more music under my own name, just like as a solo artist. And then while I was there, I was also doing everything I did at the Georgia Theater as a GM, as well as did some booking, did all the private events, got very heavy into the local scene, and kind of gathered my favorite artists and started working with them more and started managing more acts like the Pink Stones and Wander Wild and Hefner and Well Kept and Elijah Johnston, and then some other bands I've been with for a while for like Tito Stone, and a lot of stuff that my friend Philip is involved in, Philip Brantley, who was in Modern Skirts and has his own projects as well. There's 7-8 years at the Georgia Theater, kind of a blur, at least like looking back on it now, is there for, about 60 hours a week at minimum.
Wow.
And then when not there, trying to fill the gaps with making my own music or making music of artists / friends that I believe in. And then the pandemic happened and everything kind of shutting down for a bit. It kind of reassessed and started getting more into the management and in producing records of my own, as well as artists that I work with. And production, I mean, in the most basic of terms, I'm not an engineer at all. I feel like my strengths are more so on the song itself and song structure and parts and hooks and stuff like that. So definitely, I like to sit with an artist, whoever I'm working with, and kind of go through the song. And I love co-writing, helping with writing, and then love getting to the studio and kind of communicating between the engineer and the artist, and kind of just shaping like the way a movie producer is. They're not the director, they're not the writer necessarily, but they're overseeing kind of everything and maybe making sure it falls into place. And I've done that on a record that's coming out, my friend's band called Cowboy Curtis. Did that with the last 2 Tito Stone records that I worked on with Matt Martin, who is the frontman for Wander Wild and also bass player in Coin. And he's a great engineer, great producer, and he does a lot of mixing, he does mastering, and Matt doesn't necessarily need me to help with production, but certain projects, it was really great to kind of collaborate with him or any engineer on, bringing Tito's songs to life. Or say I was at Tweed a few weeks ago with Elijah Johnston for his record, and Tommy Troutwine, who's engineer, producer, songwriter, multi-instrumentalist. He made the Hotel Fiction record, and
I've heard a lot about him.
Yeah, you should definitely have him on. He's very important to the Athens music scene, but just having a good relationship with Tommy and Elijah, and there's a lot of trust there, to basically talk about, the song should be like this, or like maybe you should play this part, or maybe I should play this part, or let's talk about this lyric, or let's talk about this section if we need to carve it up. And, I guess as a producer, I'm more so on more surface level, I guess, because I'm not the one to mic the instruments. I'm not the one to get the proper sounds. I'm the one to go like, yeah, that sounds good. But, so I left the Georgia Theater, started this company called Supercanoe with my friend Tim Very, who is the drummer for Manchester Orchestra, and then my friend Stephen Payne, who is a videographer. He's a musician himself. He does all the video work for Manchester Orchestra, and we kind of started that during COVID or lockdown, so we've kind of used that to start working on other projects. And as well as, additionally, I have joined the Athens Ampithreatre Project that is currently in development, but that's fixing to go back and do construction in about a month, and hopefully without too much delay, we should have the venue built and fully operational in like 15-16 months, hopefully.
That's really cool. Do you want to explain a little bit like what it is?
Yeah, absolutely. It's on Bowley Drive, if you know where like if anyone in Athens knows where like the Bulldog Inn is. There's going to be a hotel component, there's going to be a recording studio component, there's going to be a museum component, there's going to hopefully be a few other things that I can't really discuss about that will be in there.
Top secret.
Yeah, top secret stuff, super secret stuff. As you enter, there's a lawn space, and then the venue itself that can open up to a lawn, but also can close, so you can have those shows year-round, depending on weather. It's a flex venue, so it can kind of break down. It can go as small as a 2,500 cap venue, and then, of course, if you had put in seating, it could get down to like a 1,000, 1,200 cap venue, which is the size of the Georgia Theater, and then it can open up more to 4,000, 5,000, 6,000, really depending on what the artist needs and what the demand for the artist is. So we could have a situation where we book an artist for a 2,500 cap room, it sells out, and perhaps the demand for the artist has only increased, and we can open up the room to sell more tickets.
That's awesome.
Essentially.
What was the inspiration behind starting it?
There's about 2 or 3 people who kind of started it, and then they came to me, and I fell in love with the project, and it's definitely something that I think Athens really needs, and I think it will only help bring Athens to where I think the lore of Athens is. I do think Athens has this Austin, Texas potential, this Nashville potential, and I think it's really missing just a few key components in being able to grow and spread its wings. At the theater, we would have My Morning Jacket come, or Dwight Yoakam, or even Kenny Chesney, or a few like huge artists that financially don't need to be playing the Georgia Theater, 1,000 cap venue. But there is so much history in Athens that you have these bigger artists wanting to come play Georgia Theater or 40 Watt just to come play Athens. And Atlanta's pretty saturated in the venue and festival component. And I've driven to Infinite Energy Center to go see Harry Styles or Childish Gambino. Or Justin Timberlake, and there's nothing there. It's just this big empty space that kind of lacks character. And what really inspired me to kind of work with this group is that they're very much want this to be Disneyland, not only for concert goers, but for the artists as well. But the goal is, for a ticket buyer or an artist to come in there and never want to leave.
It sounds like it could bring Athens more to the national level. When I interviewed Wim, he was talking about just how we've been nationally dormant for about 30, 40 years. So that would be really cool. Just hearing y'all's vision for this, I'm really excited to see it in action. And I'll definitely
what does everyone say about Athens? Like, you got REM, B-52s. And then it kind of drops off. You got Drive-By Truckers, and then Future Birds are doing great. Those are buddies of mine, and they've worked for close to 15 years, and they're finally starting to get their due and what they deserve. And those guys, they're all spread out anyway. They don't really live in Athens anymore, but they're definitely foundation in Athens. But what else is there? I can name you dozens of great bands that people should be listening to, but they might not have made it necessarily. That's a passion of mine that might not necessarily be in line with the amphitheater aspect of things, because amphitheater bringing these bigger artists that can come play. I do think that there's synergy in terms of this city that's kind of like an incubator for great talent. We want to build them up to sell out the 40 Watt, then sell out Georgia Theater, then come play the amphitheater. But not just artists here in this city. I think Athens has a lot to offer for people who would be visiting from out of town as well. And I think, this venue could be a huge component of that.
That's awesome. So you mentioned that you worked at the Georgia Theater. Do you want to talk a little bit about what exactly your role was, what you did?
Yeah.
And then I was curious too, were you working there before it burned down and then after, and what the transition was like from that point?
I didn't go to school here. I went to school in Indiana. I went to Indiana University, and all my friends went to school here. And I never saw a Georgia Theater show at the old Georgia Theater before it burned down. When I graduated in 2009, I was moving to Athens, and I believe Jenny Lewis was set to play the Georgia Theater. I'm a big Jenny Lewis, Rilo Kiley fan. But then the theater burned down, right before I got to town. So for that year or two that I was in Athens, the theater was in the process of raising money and rebuilding and getting their new infrastructure. And so the first time I was in Athens, I didn't really spend that much time in Georgia Theater. It was mostly just other venues. And then I got hired to move back up here in about 2014, I would say, to run the venue. What I did there, aside from the same hiring, scheduling, for the first 5-6 years, I was in charge of all of the liquor license stuff, responsible for that, and booking all the private events raising and maintaining all the sponsorships that we'd raise for the venue. And a lot of that would tie in with the alcohol stuff or the food stuff that we do in there, or just partnering with other brands. Booked a lot of rooftop events and a lot of local shows. And then, of course, just maintaining the finances and keeping track of the bank account and making sure we were hitting payroll and making sure that the investors were getting their distributions, as well as being part of, a larger team that acquired the Variety Playhouse and acquired Terminal West and everything that eventually became Zero Mile, which is the booking hub that books Georgia Theater, Terminal West, Zero Mile, and some outside events, which later got absorbed by AEG, which is AEG is like Pepsi to Live Nation's Coke, essentially. And then when they came in, structure kind of changed a little bit. The day-to-day, maintaining the structure of the building, making sure everything was clean, was up to code, making sure that all the events that we had there, that everything was advanced properly, and settling with the artists and receiving the artists when they arrived that day. And that can range from just a band showing up at 5 o'clock and doing their sound check and playing at 8 or 9 to like a 2-day setup, or an artist getting there at 6 a.m. and setting up this insane rigging, lighting structure, making sure, of course, we had enough security in hands and production to execute that. And there's a lot of pre-production work that goes into an event that's coming up. And, of course, we're booking our calendar months in advance. So there's always something to be doing, and there's always something to be looking ahead on, and always thinking about, how are we going to make summer busier? Who is the hot, young, local band? Building the rooftop was 200 cap, and we would have a band play and do a free show, and it was to capacity. Then it was, okay, let's get you again on the rooftop. And this time we'll charge ticket price. And if that sold out, well, okay, well, it's time to move you guys downstairs and justify the expenses of turning the lights on and hiring the production people inside, because it's obviously more expensive to put it on a show downstairs than it is on the rooftop. But that was a great way to kind of gauge how a emerging artist would grow. I think it was right before my time, but I know Sturgill Simpson played on the rooftop for like $150, free show. And then, of course, now...
Yeah, he's huge.
He's huge. Like, it would not make sense for him financially to play at the Georgia Theater. And I remember Chris Stapleton playing for 200 people downstairs, then 400 people downstairs, and 800 people. And he actually never came back to do a show at the Georgia Theater to sell it out, because by then he was already so huge.
Yeah.
So
I wish I was here when that happened.
It was really cool.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I'd love to talk more about what were your early influences and introduction to music, just so we can talk more about you.
It all started just by the music that parents would have at home. They liked a wide variety of things. Neither of my parents were very, super into music, but, they would have, a Pointer Sisters record or a REM record. And back then, and really, it took me to live here before I never thought about REM as, they're a Georgia band. Even though I grew up in middle school, high school, having all their records and, reading the liner notes, knowing who played on what, and loving all of REM. But I just never had that mindset. I never thought about they're part of the Athens scene or they're part of the New York scene. I was like, I like this band.
Right.
And then when I went to college, I remember a friend of mine who's like, do you know the Wigs? I was like, no. He's like, how do you not know the Wigs? They're from Georgia. I was like, I don't that's not how I find music.
Yeah.
And then, but I listened to the Wigs, and I think every single version of a band of mine has gone to open up or play with the Wigs in some form. And it's just funny how that stuff works. But, growing up, there's REM. I was a big fan of the Eagles.
Love the Eagles.
And I know that's not necessarily cool for everyone to like the Eagles, but I like them a lot.
I like them too, yeah.
And they were one of my first bands and stuff. But got really into Oasis, got really into Britpop music, and that's really what I did all day, every day in high school, was just be into music and learning how to play guitar and piano and attempting to kind of write songs. And I did that a little bit in college too, but I don't think I've really wrote anything halfway decent until the end of my college days. And then I moved to Athens because I had some friends who were playing a lot of shows, and there seemed to be a good music scene. And most of my friends in Athens decided to stay for another semester, and I graduated on time. I was like, well, I'll just come here and get a bar or waiter gig, start a band, which I always wanted to do. That year or two when I was in Athens for the first time were very formative, because learning just a lot about a live show and putting that together and promoting and getting word out for that, and then writing a song and going to the studio, recording that, releasing a record, and seeing how that works. So My passion has always been songwriting. The artists I gravitate to in terms of like the artists that I work with, it's because I respect their songwriting. I respect many types of genres and songwriters and everything. And I work with a lot of different artists, but the ones that I really get in and try to get my hands dirty and coming up with plans and taking meetings with and trying to book tours for, I do have some clout or pull when booking a tour for a young artist because of other venue managers and just kind of having that experience and being able to say, like, I think this will work because of A, B, and C, and not just saying, oh, we're going to book a show and hope people show up.
Yeah. And
also knowing that saying an artist on the road or me going on the road doesn't necessarily equate Spotify numbers or money or fame and glory, but it's something that one has to do to strengthen yourself as a live act and also just get out there and engage with whatever fans there might be or earn some new fans.
Everybody says you have to get on TikTok, like it's moving that way in order to get big.
I do encourage the artists I work with to do it, and half of them are like, yeah, and half of them are like, okay.
Yeah.
I've worked with so many artists where I'll say like, okay, you need to film this video or you need to go, we booked the show that you wanted, so like, get on Instagram and promote the frickin' show that you wanted so badly. And they'll either like they'll pretend like they don't hear me or they'll do like a half-assed job. And that's fine. But don't be surprised if the venue doesn't want to have you back.
Right.
Or don't be surprised if the booker's not like super impressed with you. Because everyone needs to be giving 110% when promoting every single event. And everyone needs to understand they should not be playing within weeks of each other in a local market under rare exceptions. Being successful in music is not an easy thing. You can have all the talent, all the songs in the world. You could have the 10 best songs and a great album and a great live act, and that's like 20% of the battle. Because the rest has to do with branding and marketing and getting the word out and making sure your friends know about it and getting your friends stoked on it. And so hopefully they'll tell their friends. And I usually, like when I talk to artists who wants to release a record, I usually say, like, from releasing this record, what are you going to get that's going to satisfy you? And when I release a record, I do want to, like, I want to make sure there's some decent press behind it, and I want to make sure that, people hear it, but I'm also not willing to go on the road for weeks at a time because I get at home and I'm 35 and not really into that. So I know that I have realistic goals, and I try to make sure when I talk to the artists I work with that they're very aware of what their goals are.
Apart from Instagram, TikTok, hanging up flyers, when you're helping a band try and promote their new album or release, what else do you tell them to do? Like, what are important elements that they need to include? What do you post on Instagram? How do you get it out?
Well, I mean, you gotta make a lot of noise, and there's like, I definitely don't have all the answers or even necessarily the right answers. I just know that a lot of grit and hard work being put into every aspect of your band, whether it's the art portion of it, the visual portion, down to what you wear, except for if you ever see me play, you know that I don't know anything about fashion or anything because I can't do that, but I do know that that's important to look good or to look the part, and also have a knack for social media, engage with fans, create fans and engage them. I think most people would be, the music gig would probably be pretty easy if you would just release a record and you had all these fans that you're waiting to engage with you, but like you have to find a way to get them to notice you.
Right.
And that's kind of the never ending question, sort of. But so the answer is like, you gotta do TikTok, you gotta do Instagram, you gotta do a great digital design and also print a poster. You also have to hit up every radio station and see if they'll do something. If they'll, and even though the question is, what is radio anymore? Does radio even matter?
I was about to ask you that.
Right. I mean, I don't know, but I know that no stone should be left unturned, which is why I think a lot of people end up giving up, because you'll keep throwing something against the wall and nothing's sticking. Or if you're in a band, but if I'm in the band, I'm the lead singer and songwriter and putting all the money into it and putting all the effort into it, and like no one else is really contributing, no one's helping. Like bands that band together and share the load, I think will always be better than one person who is by himself. But it's really about engaging and also just knowing that you would be making the music and releasing it regardless. It's like, it's not about trying to be famous or be successful. The idea of being successful to me would be able to make a living off music so you can continue to make music. the dream to me would be like if all I had to do was get up and go record tunes and then release them, but I can't because it's not really viable. So I have other career paths that allow me to, when have some free time, go record some music and then release it and play a few shows, feel satisfied with that. And then, a band like Hefner, for example, everyone's kind of putting their big boy pants on, and we're meeting once a week, and we're having objectives that we need to hit, things that, whether we're talking about merch, we're talking about getting everything ready to release the next song and getting everything ready to promote the next headline show and getting a tour set up and finding a booking agent, building the band to where they get to a level to where there can be some money to go around. But also, at the end of the day, like I don't go and meet with Hefner and work on Hefner stuff because I'm hoping to make money off it. It's because it's something that I believe in and because it's cool.
So you mentioned your early influences in it, or you said Oasis, and I work at the 40 Watt Club, and I'm really, really sad that I couldn't work y'all's show for Oasis, but can we talk about that? Just
absolutely.
Because I saw the videos, and then I saw y'all perform at Smith's Old Bar. It just looked so fun, and like you guys had just great stage presence and energy, and yeah, can you talk about that show? And
I'll talk about Oasis all day long.
Yeah, and tell me about just the band, everything. Yeah.
My wife was saying the other day, like, because we had these two shows set up, and I think we're going to do it again. I know everyone at 40 Watt was pumped on it, and
I'm going to be there. The next one.
Yeah. We've already talked about some dates, hopefully maybe in October or later, and
awesome.
I think we'll continue to do it. I'm a massive Oasis fan. That's like my favorite band. I love that band just because the guitarist is the songwriter and he does all the background vocals. He sings a few songs every once in a while, but you have this front man who is his brother, and then the guitarist wrote all the songs, and then they release all these B-sides that the guitarist sings on. It's like an island you can get lost in on, and
I understand the name Oasis.
Yeah, I never thought about it like that. So the guy that I got to do the Liam Gallagher stuff, his name's Chris, and he was the drummer in our first band, the District Attorneys, and we played around Athens a good bit. We were probably more around in like 2010, 11, and 12. The District Attorneys, we won Flagpole Band and Album of the Year, so that's as good as a Grammy. That was probably, I was in my early 20s then, so we would tour up to New York, we tore up to Austin back. We would play a good bit, and we would practice all the time. We gave it as much as we could for those 4 or 5 years. And there was exceeding a lot of goals. I don't think there was really ever a goal in my mind of like becoming like famous band. It was more like I'll work my day job and then focus on the band stuff. And that's my passion. And at the end of the day, if I can make a record and write some songs, that's great, and play some cool shows. And then everyone was just getting into life stuff, figuring out what everyone was doing, like relationships or moving to different cities. I started getting a little restless in my songwriting and started that Party Dolls band, and we just did one record for that. And I wanted to release it. I wanted to make sure people were there, and I thought it'd be fun to do an Oasis tribute thing because I do love that stuff. And at the time, Yacht Rock, they had like this whole like company essentially, and Yacht Rock's huge, and they have Nick, who founded Yacht Rock, he has this Beatles tribute thing called Please Please Rock Me. I don't think they do it as much anymore, but they would play at Smith's Old Bar all the time. And I would go see it, and it was just like going to like a museum. And they would do the Beatles, and they would do it perfectly. And these songs that never really got played live by the Beatles. There's a difference between a band that's just doing cover, because we did as a band learn like 40 songs, just really quickly. Like, what 40 songs can we learn so we can fill up a 3-hour set? And then we'll throw in our own originals and go play at bars so we can make some money to go make a record. And then we did this Oasis thing, knowing that I was going to release Party Dolls record, have my band and my Party Dolls band open up for Oasis, knowing that if we pushed like a themed like Oasis thing in Atlanta, that it will probably sell out the 300 ticket room. And it did. And that was great. So I could have my band and I could play my songs for like 40 minutes. And
that's really good marketing. That's really smart. Yeah.
And then after, have a hell of a lot of fun doing these Oasis songs. So I was able to feel creatively satisfied by playing my own songs, and then just have some fun doing the Oasis thing and doing it justice, and playing all the hits, but all like the classic album tracks and the famous B-sides and stuff. And it was great because you'd have these British people who live in Atlanta hear about it, and they're coming, and I've made friends because of that, and they're like, yo, that's right. And like, whatever.
I liked your accent. That's
I
good.
can't do an accent. But we did the 40 Watt gig, we did the Smith's Old Bar gig, and they were both so much fun. And the other guitar player, he was also a guitar player in the District Attorneys. And then the other 3 guys, friends of other bands, like the bass player, his name's Alec. I've worked with him in other capacities. We've known each other for a while, and he's a big Oasis fan. So right off the bat, like he and I are the ones who showed up to practice, knowing the ins and outs of the songs. Drummer, guitarist, and keyboard, they're learning the song. They didn't grow up listening to them every day. So it's a great way to have fun. I do love playing live, and I love an energetic crowd. So doing something to kind of guarantee that there will be people there is really fun. It's definitely a labor of love, and it's, I think definitely something we will keep doing. And then, just casually working with other artists. I think I mentioned we worked on Elijah's new record, and I got to co-write 2 songs with him on that, and that's so much fun. I just love co-writing, and it's something I've never really done it for my own stuff. With other people, I guess it's more of, look what I can do for you. Let me get in there, and I do my best to not try and come in and command the scene.
Turn it into your song.
Right, turn it into my stuff. Each song is its own thing, but I definitely kind of have my own set of beliefs of like how something should be, and I definitely want to make that voice heard. But also knowing that like Taylor might have an idea that's completely opposite of mine and goes completely against it, and that's such a fun learning experience to like kind of sit with it, go, okay, well, let's see what he's saying, and like I might never ever hear it quite the way he heard it, or the person who hears the finished product for the first time, because I had this idea in my head that never got fully realized. But that's also kind of the give and go of the creative process. So and you're never too old or too young to start learning that.
What's it like co-writing with somebody? Like, what's the process like? And I guess it'll be different depending on who you're working with, but could you go into that a little bit?
It's definitely different. A song that Elijah sent me, he just sent me what he wrote, and it was like a half-finished song without a chorus. And then I wrote a chorus, and then I think I had like an extended chorus, and I sent it, and I wrote my version, and I sent it back to him. He like cut out that bridge and put a tagline to the chorus I wrote, and it was, and I heard it was like, oh, okay, yeah. So that's really fun, and that's kind of how it is with Elijah. And with Tito, it's kind of the same thing. He'll either send me like a start of a song and say like, finish it, and I'll finish it, or he'll send me a full song, and I'll say like, cut that out, or we'll get together and we're at his house for a few hours, and we end up writing like 4 or 5 songs. I can't even really remember who wrote what, and it's just like we're just hanging out, recording it to the phone, then going listen to it and talking about it, and then going back, and then taking these songs, taking to the studio, and then that becomes this completely different thing, because what you have versus how you wrote it in your head versus what it ends up being. And sometimes you're like, this is exactly what I want, or this exceeded my expectations. That's usually what I hope for, and that's kind of why I really enjoyed the process of making this new record with Tommy Elijah. Was like, a lot of the times we'd be like, okay, well, we're coming to the studio this Thursday, and it's Tuesday, and the song's not written yet. Maybe the idea or the title or like a little piece is written. So like stay up all that Tuesday night or Wednesday night before and write it to where I'm happy with it, send it to the guys, go in. The Problematic for the People record, I'm very happy with it, but I was definitely like, it was the first time where I would try to be precious about everything. And it's fun, and it turned out, but I really like the off-the-cuff thing. And prior to this new record with Tommy Elijah and Gideon, like, it was always, you book days in the studio, the first 2 days, get drums and bass, just knock that out, and then go back and do everything, which is a very constructive way of doing something. It's definitely a good way to be mindful of the budget and everyone's time. But going in and like starting the day and leaving the day with a finished song is definitely, for me, way more rewarding. The best I can really offer is just like structure of a song. And if it's something that I really gravitate to, I can add to it. And I love doing that. But also, I also don't have to be the one to do it. Like Tito sent me half of a song, and then I wrote what I thought was the rest of it. I sent it to Tito, and he liked it. But there's this itch, this thing I was like, I feel like this is like something that we've done before a lot. And then I hit up Taylor Cotton from Hefner and Wonderwall and Grand Rapids, and Taylor's a songwriting machine. And someone I really respect that. I was like, can And so Taylor and I met up and worked on Tito's song without Tito. It was like, here's what I have. What would you have? And he came up with this other part for it. And then like additional lyrics. And it was kind of fitting, and it still wasn't quite done. Then we got back together again, and we added this bridge that I didn't think was going to happen. I just didn't expect a bridge like that. And then it ended up, then we went in the studio, and it became this thing. So that was an example of a song starting like from Tito, then to me, then to Taylor, then back to me and Taylor, and then we take it to the studio and knock it out. When someone sends me their record to listen to and says this is finished, I'll always like accept it. I accept it as like this is like their truth or their art, whatever. But if it's a song that's being written and it hasn't hit the studio yet, it's like it's not done until it feels right. And there's no way to really know that until you get that feeling. And I remember when Taylor and I were working on this Tito song, I remember like going like, it's good, but I don't know. And then like we eventually got to the place where we were all super happy with it.
So when you're sitting and you're co-writing with somebody and you're coming up with lyrics and maybe you've got a guitar or drums or something, what comes first for you? Does it depend each time what song you're writing? Do the lyrics come first? The instruments? Does it kind of all blend together?
For me, it's usually the melody, and that's the most important part for me. That I feel like of all the things that I like, as far as music goes, the thing I probably maybe have the most experience or knowledge on is what makes a good melody. When I hear a song for the first time, that's what attracts me. Lyrics are usually the last thing I really notice. Lyrics are usually it's kind of like a relationship. You meet someone and you want to start dating them because they're attractive, physically or something. But that's not foundation of a lasting. That doesn't make the relationship last. Like what makes a relationship last is getting to know each other, getting to understand each other, and having this bond and finding what's underneath and everything. And that, to me, that's the lyric. That's what's important.
That's a really beautiful analogy.
Yeah, but like the surface level stuff, like this person's pretty or this person's handsome or like, that's what gets you in the door, but doesn't necessarily make you stay. So you can have all the great sounding parts and a cool riff. And I feel like the bridge that gaps those things is the melody. And usually melody, for the most part, is how it's being sung. And so if I'm starting to write a song or I hear something like I try to map out the melody. Like I'll usually like write some nonsense words to keep track of the melody. And a lot of the times, often not, I usually end up liking the nonsense words, or at least because like, I don't know, how much of our brain did they say we use? Like 5%, 8%. And you see all those movies where like, take this pill and you use all of your brain. And some of the songwriting, like sometimes there's some happy accidents, like you're writing this song and like you're playing this melody and like this like word is like for some reason you don't know why, because you might not even know what the subject of the song is. And I don't necessarily always know what the subject of the song is when I'm starting it, or sometimes I'll know going into it, but it might change. But then like a word might pop up while going blah 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 like over the thing, and like, well, this is a word that should fit and gravitate to that, and the pieces start to come together. It's like this unsolved puzzle, and once the puzzle feels solved and good, then the song is written. It's definitely a little bit of magic, music or any sort of art. But for me, it's the music stuff, like this thing that did not exist that got created out of thin air, whether it's by one person or a team. There's some magic in there, and it's like exercising muscle in your brain that most people don't choose to. I'm sure there's someone out there who is a forestry major or something, and might never pick up a guitar or instrument, but like they might have it in them to write a good song, but they'll never know because they never tried.
You can be confident that you're not that person.
Right. Well, yeah, I definitely tried, but also I could be really good at something else that I never tried. But there's people who have great voices but they don't sing. They just happen to have a nice voice. And if they worked harder, they could probably be more naturally gifted singer than someone who works harder than anyone. Some people are just born with certain things. Some people have to exercise certain muscles to get to where they are.
This is kind of off topic, but you mentioned the Eagles earlier, and I was just curious, what's your favorite song by them?
Of all time is probably, I'd have to say Last Resort, but it's such a long song and so far off from anything that I'm really like kind of into. I love New Kid in Town. I've been thinking about that one lately, but I'm more of a Don Henley person. New York Minute was probably like my first like song that I obsessed with.
There might be more Glenn Frey.
Yeah.
He also, weirdly enough, he died on my birthday in
Really?
2016. Yeah, I was really
That's
sad because
crazy.
I love the Eagles and he was
Yeah.
my favorite.
Yeah, he was. I love them. And you've seen that documentary, the two-parter.
Which one?
It's called History of the Eagles. It's like a two-parter. It was on Showtime, but I believe it's on Netflix now.
I'm gonna watch it. If it's on Netflix. I didn't know
It is
that.
one of the best documentaries of all time, even
wow.
if you hate the Eagles.
I have to watch it. That's what I'm gonna do later.
and do you know who Bill Simmons is?
Yeah.
He back when he had Grantland, he wrote this piece on that documentary.
Mm-hmm.
And you have to watch the documentary, then you have to go read the Bill Simmons piece because it's one of the funniest things I've ever read, especially like just dissecting a documentary.
Mm-hmm.
Because there's a lot of stuff to make fun of Glenn Frey about and a lot of stuff to make fun of Don Henley about. And I love Joe Walsh. And I love all of them. But Don Henley and Glenn Frey are pretty easy targets to be made fun of. But I love New Kid in Town.
That's a good one.
I'm a big fan of I Can't Tell You Why. I think that's just such a perfectly produced song.
Mm-hmm. I like Lion Eyes a lot. I
Lion
love
Eye's great too.
a lot of their music tells a story, and I think the stories behind
and
their songs are cool.
that one, like, a song that kind of tells a specific story, I feel is like very hard to do well.
Yeah.
Because it can really get cheesy really quick. Lion Eye's a good example. Good one. Billy Joel's really good at that. Abstract is a lot easier. It means so many different things to so many different people. But the Eagles did a good job at that. You have to watch that documentary.
I'm going to watch it tonight. It's on my little
because
bucket
the
list.
first 40 minutes, it's not even really about the Eagles. It's about like Linda Ronstadt and Jackson Browne, and then just like that California scene, that scene in the early 70s. And then, the first half is the one that everyone loves. I love the second half because they talk about Hell Freezes Over is probably my first record. So that's was my introduction. And New York Minute was on that record. So I always associate that as an Eagles song. But yeah, I guess I would say Last Resort. Or, Jackson Browne wrote all of Take It Easy with the exception of It's a Girl, My Lord, in a Packed-in Ford, Slowing Down, Take a Look at Me. Glenn Frey wrote that line, and he probably came up with the idea to do the ooze at the end. But the rest, that's a Jackson Browne song.
I didn't know that.
Yeah.
I'm going to have to do a deep dive in the music history. Do you have any shows that you'd like to talk about?
I have one show coming up at 40 Watt on May 28th.
Okay.
That's going to be the last time I play for the foreseeable future with the backing band I've had for the last 5 years. We're just going to play songs from the record that I released last year and then a few other songs from other records. And then after that, I'm going to take a break for a few months, but also get the band together from this Tommy Elijah Gideon thing.
Okay.
And we're going to play shows with this new record. This record I made with Tommy Elijah and Gideon, it's very special. It's special to all four of us. So it's not something I wanted to say, hey, my old band, let's just take a few of these songs and add it to there. I want to play it live with Tommy, Elijah, and Gideon because it was a lot of pure magic moments there. And I've had pure magic moments with Philip, Jeremy, and Josh. But I just want to try this other thing. I have 45-minute set, 40 Watt, playing with this new band called the Echolocations, made up some Tweet students, and Tommy's playing guitar in that band as well. And then this band that I love called Quiet Hounds are headlining. They're an Atlanta band. They've been around for a long while, but yeah, it should be fun. That's the only show I really have on the books for the foreseeable future. And then I'm planning on an album release show sometime in October that I'm trying to work out, and then also figuring out doing more Broasis stuff. But yeah, 528 at 40 Watt should be great. Please come if you can.
Can you talk about Supercanoe?
Yeah.
And so you started a multi-purpose management and production company with Tim Berry from Manchester Orchestra and then Stephen Payne. So how does one go about starting a management and production company? What was the story or drive behind wanting to start this company?
Well, we had another partner involved as well too. So it was kind of four of us, and then but that partner kind of dissolved. We set it up like a real record label, and then there's a video component, so we're making music videos and we're filming live sessions. And we're also taking paid gigs to go do something at the Fox Theater and film Manchester Orchestra, or go do Coin at Tabernacle, or make a music video for someone, or record a record for someone, or do a whole album campaign for someone, which means the press, the photos, the artwork, the videos, everything. And we've been doing it for a little bit, and sometimes we're really busy, sometimes we're not. This weekend we're making two music videos for Cowboy Curtis, and then a music video for Vision Video. which is an Athens band, making this video for Vision Video. I'm really excited about because it's the first single from their anticipated new record. We did some videos for Pink Stones, and we also recorded them doing like a whole live session. So like that stuff's fun for me. We have a day. Everyone's so busy, but we have a day to do this. So like we go to this location. We're going to film everything for a music video. Take a break. Come back up. We're going to record a live session. You're doing the whole record, so then we can send 4 of these songs to NPR Tiny Desk and like something to like Stereo Gum or something. And that's kind of what I like to do with songwriting production. It's kind of what I like to do with Supercanoe. Here's the task at hand. Here's the budget we're working with, or no budget at all. Here's the time constraints. How do we get the most out of it and make it the best we can? And that's kind of in my mission in Supercanoe, whereas Steven's mission is, doing his best video work and photo work. And Tim is like arguably one of the biggest rock bands that's out there, right? And he's the one who's bringing in like the opportunities. Like, hey, we can do something in Manchester, we can do something in Coin, or we can do something with the rapper B.O.B. What can we bring to the table? And like Supercanoe, there is elements of Supercanoe that will be utilized for the Ampithreatre Project, which I'm excited about. So it's about 2+ years old, but still very much in an infant phase.
Nice. That sounds very well rounded and thought out, and you have a lot of really cool things that you're doing.
Trying.
Yeah.
Sure.
You always gotta, I guess, start somewhere and then build from there, and then it turns in. It's so cool to see, like, when you start a project where you started and then looking back where you are now, and even if it's not finished or at the final stage, it's just cool to see how much progress you've made. Yeah, I wanted to thank you so much for coming on and being here. It was so cool to have you as a guest, and I've learned so much about you. Also, you performed at my Nucci Space Jam.
Oh, yeah, with Annie.
Yeah, last semester,
Yeah.
and Zoe Willard.
Another Zoe. Yeah, because I was wondering... I got the Zoes confused, but I realized that you were 2 different Zoes.
Yeah, she's such a cool person.
She's great.
We're friends like from class and stuff.
She's great, and like Annie is she's a great violinist, great artist in her own right. She's also a killer engineer and producer, and has worked on a lot of great projects. And she's also touring as Faye Webster's keyboardist and violinist. And so, she's extremely talented. And that Nucci thing was really fun, and that's something I normally don't do, the acoustic thing, but which is why I love doing it with Annie. And it's definitely a side. I mean, I like the rocking, the silly stuff, but at the end of the day, I'm just a sad boy who wants to play acoustic songs, and that's very fun to do, especially when there's a warm, receptive audience. That was really fun. And thank you for having me. This was so much